Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 190 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. I'm going to flip the camera around here and show you what I'm doing. I've shot, let me turn the camera around and I'll show you. Got a pretty good array of points on the high point of her hand, and now I'm going to do some wider opening because I'm not going to shoot all of this everywhere. So I want to get the curvature of that hand pretty well established and put some points out here, but I got to work with that, with the wide crochet, the wide chassis. And so what I'm doing now is I'm going to point tip of knuckle, tip of knuckle, tip of knuckle. I'll go down here and then I'll end up getting way down here on the towards the ends of her fingers. Now, this is a professional. This is pragmatism, okay? I stayed up, I don't know if I stayed up a quarter inch, but I stayed up at least 3/16 of an inch on these knuckles. One of the things that shows really quickly on hands is if you carve them flat. You want to have good volume, especially with a female subject. Having that volume, that plumpness makes her look like she has soft hands. And so I want to have this nice curve, and there'll be tissue that, you know, folds the way they normally go. But then I want to have fingers that I can slender up to match the job. And by leaving some extra material, you know, I'll be in good shape. Now, I've opened up this one already. Let me show you what I'm doing here. You can see going from this knuckle, which is, you know, more on the end of her finger there, the top where it meets the hand, down to this first knuckle that's fairly deep. And you have to be careful. I had to open this up a little bit to get at it. I used a ripper, used a 9-point, and used a regular 5/8 chisel, just a machine chisel. And now I can go to the next one. It's the same concept of having an idea of where I'm going. I also now have this already opened up, so I can open up a little bit here, take this off. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't know if we'll be able to see it on camera, but let's see what we'll show. I'll do this in the precision check. Okay, let's see how this goes. I've got, you know, almost 2 inches on this, but it's at a diagonal. Okay, it's not straight in. Straight in depth, if I can put two parallels, you know, it's showing it's probably closer to, an inch or so. So I can lift that off. Because I've got a rough idea where it is, I can just get stone off this. You know, and when I say I've done this, I've done this a lot, for a long time. You need to go slow when you're starting, because if you go fast, you'll make mistakes, okay? Go slow enough so you're in control. This is mainly to check and see if I've got interference on the bottom of my needle. And I don't. I've got enough clearance under my needle so I don't have to drop it another 1/8 of an inch. This will be good. I can work this off. I'm just going to get back into this. You see, I took that's about half of the distance that I had to go. This is with a 1-inch machine. a 9-point down in a hole like that. You still have to have room for it to bounce around. It'll jam and it'll pop and just go pink, and it'll pop that whole carbide or it'll fracture it and break it, and it's junk. It just pops it off, and you can brace it back on later. You can redo the joint. See now? Now I'm down, and I've only got just a small amount to go. So I'm gonna grab my small drill and my pencil. I'll have to find that. See a bump, okay? Just trying to go fast as we can. All right, we're gonna go back on here. Now, should be able to slide my needle out and just rotate it. Stay up about a 1/4 inch. Yeah, see, and I'm right there. So let me see if I can find that pinch. Well, that was funny. You're supposed to lay your chisels down with the edges facing you. Okay, so when you set them down, you can look at them, identify them. On organized wood carver, that's what they do. Sometimes it's really easy when I'm only working with 3 or 4 chisels. When I'm going through 40 chisels, you know, and work with all the different stuff, I can sharpen them all at once instead of sharpening one chisel until it's gone. And I'll work all the different ones. I don't know if people might have to drill that one a little bit more. No, that's right on the money. It's really good to get in the habit every time you move the pointing machine to make sure you pull this up, because if the barrel's loose, if the stop's loose, you'll catch it. And if you just assume it's okay and just pull the needle or leave it, you're apt to bump the needle or not realize that the stop was loose, whether from the first measurement or because something got bumped. All right? And you're going to learn that these points look, it is a lot of chaos until you open her up enough that you can really see it. It's not going to make any sense. Okay? Trust the process. Do it right. Trust the process. Okay? I'm going to keep going. I'm going to move this pointing machine. I'm going to do her other 2 mid-finger knuckles. You know, her other 2 knuckles here. This one and then this one. I just did this one. I'm going to do this one, then I go back up and do this one on top. And then I'll probably go further and go down near her fingertips. And make her fingers long, always make them shorter. And I'll shoot near her fingertips, but I'll stay high, and I won't cut the ends of them off until the very end of the job. But that way, once I have these done, I can go and shoot a series of points. I shoot one or two, you know, like in the middle of each one of these, tarsals, middle, whatever they are. Middle of these phalanges, you know, there's the middle of these bones, halfway between the knuckle, and that really gives me enough of a roadmap. That's all I need to know, okay? So I don't have to do exhausted to get that perfect. And when I'm carving, I just have to remember that these are still really tall, but this will start opening her up. It'll start making it look like there's some type of hand form right there on her chest. And that'll also give me a reference point if I want to shoot a few points down on her fabric to where I can get her body, how far back it is, and make sure that I'm in good shape, because I should be great. This should be fantastic. So keep going. I'll be back in a little bit. As I'm shooting this next knuckle, this next point here, can you see my pointing machine is almost touching the stone? Okay, and so that's part of pulling the needle back to make sure it doesn't foul. But you've got to be careful as you're working, because you'll forget and you'll jam the machine on here, and it'll move your adjustment. Okay, that's one of the easy ways to bump it. And so I've got to clearance this and open this up a lot for that bump machine to be comfortable. There's just a lot of needles to this. Okay, there's one. Just open this all up down here. You're going to go up about that same distance. This is almost flat, so you're going to go in. You're going to take off about 2 inches. Okay. As you're working, this airline fitting has worn down over a long period of time. And I know I replaced the other one a while back, and I probably told you the whole what you ought to do back then. I don't really remember. I always try to keep, if you go buy them, buy more than one if you're doing much carving, because you'll end up having to stop work to go get them, and I'd used up my spares. So, but once they wear, it's a lot more difficult to make them fit into your hand machine. So, and they're supposed to be sacrificial. Okay, this is the part that's supposed to wear out. This is why you don't screw it directly, the airline directly into the machine, is that you're supposed to have this brass there, and the brass is supposed to fatigue and wear out and turn into junk, not your, and this is a different brand, and see it's got like one more barb on it, and sometimes that turns into a problem. But what will happen is that you'll wear these shoulders out as you tighten it in, and it'll tighten in a little bit further, and you won't be able to put a wrench on it anymore. And so you've got to be able to screw it into your big bushing, this part, and then have enough room to get on it with your tool. And see, this one stands proud even when I turn it down in. And this one I just took out, it's going to screw right down to where it's jammed right up against it. See, and it's harder to get a wrench on that. So buy them 2 or 3 at a time. Don't just buy one and think it'll just last because it's supposed to, because it won't. And then you'll end up having it need one. I don't like this longer extra piece. I'm not going to cut it off. I'm going to try it and see how it goes. But they're more apt to cause it, as you push on it, you'll rupture the interior and create a bubble. And take your air hose, your clamp, and trim it off so that when it's tight, it's a perfect fit. And it's not you don't have a loose end sticking out. when you trim the end, try to trim it in a way that's not going to cut you, because they will cut you. And then you bleed and it's a mess, and it's just not good. But I'm not a fan of quick change, quick release right here by the hand machine. I don't think they last as well. I don't like having my tools hung around with that. And it's easier and it's immensely faster to just put an extra airline out. So you can tighten that in with a wrench and it'll stay good. Just have 2 airlines. I mean, run a splitter up top coming in and have 2 airlines. And when you're doing something like this where you're switching back and forth, when I'm pulling stone off in bulk, I want the bigger hammer. And when I'm doing finer work, yeah, I can throttle my big hammer down and do all of it with my big hammer, but I can do it more effectively with a smaller hammer. So having a 1 inch and a 3/4 with separate lines to be able to run them, it just makes sense. I mean, and it's personal preference. And I had to screw one back to the other and back and forth, and then for a while, and then I finally just, ran a second line, because I was used to that from Gary's, and I finally put a second line in here after a reasonably short period of time. And I've got the airline plumbed into my studio with iron pipe running around the walls on a slight tilt, so that it'll drain water out. It creates it'll condense on the walls and actually drain down, and you can drain it off, and it'll help naturally, or I don't want to say naturally, but it'll help remove water from your air that otherwise you'd have to run a filter and everything, because it will collect. I've got all my air takeoffs pointed up, so the water will drain back down to the drain valve on the end. And then where the line comes off, I've just got a T, and I've got 2 airlines hooked in, and it's the little things like that. It's the leaving the pointing machine set in one spot, so you can shoot as many points as it'll reach before you move everything and readjust it. It's stuff like that. All these things that you can do to streamline your work will produce a more efficient rate of production. I mean, you'll be amazed at all the little things. When you can walk into my studio, it's the best thing in the world I love about my studio is if I'm accused of being a lot of things, there's a lot of things I am, and but I'm pretty uptight about what goes in this building, and I don't want anything in here that doesn't belong in this space, because there's nothing that I love more than being able to walk in here, turn on the air, turn on my suction, and carp. I don't have to move anything. I don't have to get anything out or pick anything up. It's dedicated, and I've got all my crap and junk and stuff in the way in other places that drags me nuts and wears me out, because I got to pick up this to work on that, because I haven't put everything away like I should. In my studio, it's got to be right, and it's awesome. So, but anyways, back to work. Now that my hose is fixed, I'm going to get back to work. I figured before I start back up, it's been a little bit, time enough for things to chill out. I'll show you, I probably showed you before. This is an airline here that goes out, and it just points outside here. You can see where my airline comes into the studio, and I've got a ball valve below here, and I've got the air to turn the air off. The airline's drained right now. If I turn this, there's probably a little bit of water sitting, and the water will sit down on the bottom. So I usually don't drain this one until I've got the air pressure on, and then it blows it all out the side. But if you've got an air fitting, like I've got a quick connect here, so I can hook onto it, and that should be pointed up some, not level or down, but at least up a little bit. And so it allows the water to drain. And I've got this tipped here, so this should drop all the way around the studio, because it goes all the way down this wall and across the back wall and then along the benches. But this will help capture water coming out of the compressor. So I got to keep the compressor tank drained, put a good valve on. But let's go over here real quick. I don't know, you're supposed to drain it every day like I do. But I've got my air line coming down, and this is how I've got my air set up for my air hoses. This is an extra setup so we could put more air lines on. And you can see that it's angled up so the water never rests on this. And then at the end, I've just got a T. And it took me a long time to, you know, it's not cheap to get ball valves and to get all the different parts and components. You should make sure they still work once in a while. And that's the one for my airlines that I carve with. But the end of the line is down. I just made real simple hangers and I literally just made sure that this was the lowest point on the line. And then when the air's not on, let's see how much water's in there. Not a lot, because it's pretty dry this time of year. But sometimes you'll get, you know, a certain amount of water. You'll get, you know, enough you could have a sip. But that's air that doesn't, water that doesn't go in my air lines. Your air lines can also develop air in them in here. But the problem most people have when they're carving is they don't keep their tank drained on the air compressor. And then you end up with all this crap because it washes all the black debris from piston wear and everything. It washes out and it sprays all over your face, your hands, your shoulder, and you know, so just something to think about. All right, back to carving. Okay, right now, I don't know if I can swing this to show you without taking a separate video. I just shot this point down here beside her hand. And because these points, now especially on, because I want to try to sort of establish, I want to stay up on these a little bit as well. So I've got room to have some extra volume for drapery so I can make everything match with folds going from the top, you know, down to a waist that go beyond the scope of this model. But I shot this point, and over here on the stone, I'll show you in a second, it's pretty good, you know, it's off the hand. This point, remember, I said I was going to stay up, so I stayed up about 1/4 inch. Because this point is about 1/4 inch away, I'm going to be right tight against the stone going down to this point. So I'm not going to carve away a bunch on the hand side. I'll just make a flat wall down there, because what I want to do is I want to establish the volume of her hand on this job. So let me pull the camera over and show you how that looks, okay? Okay, see right here, I drew a line, and my needle point is in here at the bottom of this hole. So I'm not going to be on that point, but I'll be really close to it. And that's fine, because I just want to establish this volume for the needle. Establish where her chest is. So this is all a judgment call. You're going to run into it. There's basically two perspectives on doing this when we're shooting this. If you're absolutely 100% perfect certain where everything's going to go, you don't need to leave any extra stone. You shoot right to that, those final point, every point, right to the end of it, and you're done. Okay, that works really, really well if this was the entire job. If all I was doing was carving a bust of her, and this is all the information that I had, that I needed, that I was going to use, that works great. The matter with this project is that we're marrying this bust to this model, okay? And so we've got information from the bust for the top, you know, not even about a quarter, okay? Because this is quite 2 feet tall. And that's about a third, I guess, because if she's 6 foot and this is just under 2 feet, that'd be a third. I mean, 6 foot, 2 foot would be a third. So we've got about a third of the information on this one model, okay? But we have to marry this information to the information that we interpreted from the other one, because remember, we enlarged it and we swung it from compasses, so we made it bigger. And so we've got to work in this area here, this midsection right in here around her waist, from her waistband up. We've got to make that match this, and to have a little bit of extra stone there to kind of make it flow good. I think it's a good thing, okay? So I'm staying up just a little bit, just so I've got a little bit extra room, and then I can clean it off and make everything blend and match really well, because we'll have to carve them together in a way that looks like they were always together, okay? Hope that makes sense. So, but if you're doing a small, like we did a little, there's a video from way back, I did a little angel in Carrara, just a little small angel standing on, standing up next to a cloud. And I made a model, the plaster's up on the wall. And that was all the information. So I just pointed the whole thing. I didn't leave lots of extra, a quarter inch here, a quarter inch there, 3/16 or whatever. I stayed up a little bit, like I like to do, maybe 1/8 or 1/16 on a lot of the points. But I didn't leave a lot of extra material anyways, because I knew exactly where it was going. And this one we need to have, especially in this lower area of her, this lower portion. I can shoot more accurately up here because we're not going to go crazy. I can shoot to the mass of the hair. We're not going to change that a lot. Then over here where I marked it, I've got to do this. This is low, this is low. I want to add material around this eye because I think this side of the face is much better. I like it a lot better. But down here towards the bottom, I'll leave some extra material so we can sort of deal with that hand, that arm. And one of the goals with this project in the very beginning is to make sure her arms are right. Because when you carve, I've seen a couple of jobs that were done by masters, men that I respect as very, very talented and very, very skilled, and they could have come out better because they shot one arm in the wrong place and ended up being way too long because they committed too early. And so I'm trying to learn from what they taught me by default, okay? So I want to be able to have enough room that if I have to turn her hand just a little bit, I can rotate her hand just a tiny bit and everything will be fine, okay? I'm going to start cutting this point. As you're opening the stone up, and right now I'm making some big jumps along the side of her hand to just try to open up around her hand. It can go really fast, but there's only certain things that the point machine will really reach. I had a discussion. Some people think you can make a bent needle that hooks around to point the stuff to get around. It really doesn't, I mean, yeah, I guess it can technically reach it, but it's kind of overkill. You don't really need it. You should be able to do everything with a straight point, straight stylus. And before somebody asks about where do you get a point like this to use in your hand machine, this is just a chisel that's been sharpened to a point. Okay, maybe they sell these. I don't think they do. I really don't know. But this is like a 3/8 chisel shank. They just had a small or quarter inch or whatever chisel that I just sharpened to a point, because that's where you get it. Most people aren't pointing in the first place, so they're not selling the tools for it. All right, but this one I've got to open up a chunk of stone here in order to be able to point this point above her hand. And I'll do that, and I'll probably do one way up here, and know that that's sort of a contour, that I can point the tips of her fingers. Having her fingers be a little bit longer is better than having it be a little bit short. Having her hand be a little bit too fat versus having it flat or look like it's masculine or one of the things, so the design cues with the female fingers is that they should taper. If you end up carving a bump for a joint and a bump for a joint, it's going to look like a man's hand. It's going to look like she's got arthritis. You want nice plump. You don't want the knuckles to stand proud. You want them to be a little bit of a dent. You want to convey that fullness, that soft hands that a female figure should have to look delicate. Okay. As I'm opening this up with some saw cuts, it's a judgment call. This goes back, it's kind of like a judgment call, and I talked before about leaving a little bit of extra stone. This stone, I still have reference with this nice flat face, okay? I got a good reference, and I still got some finishing work to do after I carve this, okay? Once I carve her head, carve her wings, and all that other stuff, I still have to be able to produce this flat die portion, the back of this. I still have to do the plinth, and I'm gonna have to lower this die portion over here on this side. And so for now, it would be very easy. I could take and shoot a couple of high points on her head and know that I could just go and mow all this stone right off and take this all back 2.5 inches or whatever it works out. And then over here on the sides, you know, I could shoot a little perimeter around her face. I know that over here I'd go back to like her shoulder and take everything off and just cut it right off. If this is this didn't have any finishing work on it, you know, any flat stuff to do subsequent to it beyond just the plinth, because the plinth you can do that without having a bunch of reference material. But to have some reference material for this, I think it's worth it. So I'm going to open this up as I go, but I'm probably still going to leave material on these upper corners. So I've got something that I can put a straight edge on until I know that I don't need it, okay? Because when it's here, it's great. When it's gone forever. And it's easy to cut it off later. But if I can leave some flat on here so I've got a good measure, I don't know that I'm going to need this necessarily, but until I know I don't need it, I'm going to leave it there and just not have regrets and wish I left it on a little bit longer. This is getting closer. This is a lot of digging in order to make everything fit. And I still got to go about 1 inch deep, and that seems like a lot, but if I look on my model, so if I go over, I'm shooting this point right here. And from here, vertical to that, wow, that's like that's almost 2 inches deeper than the foundation. That's how far back it is. We want her to look like she's got a hand on her and she's coming forward like she's stepping out of the stone. We don't want her to look like she's flat and that her hand is way out in the front and the rest of her, like her butt's pulled back. We want it to look like she's got some movement forward. So by having your upper shoulders back a little bit, it can help represent motion. A lot of times you'll see these jobs designed and they'll have a lot of thrust apparent in the abdomen, the groin area, and it'll look like her lower stomach. They'll have the waist, it'll be a high-waisted design, so the waist kind of drapes over her stomach, and then her not really her stomach, but her lower groin, down around her belly button, the top of her groin area, will be thrusting forward to help denote that motion. And I didn't go quite that far with this one. I want it to be more subdued, but I'm going to keep drilling this, and because we still got to go at least another inch deep. And what will happen as you're carving this is you're going to look at, like right now, her lump for her hand. You're going to look at that and go, yeah, I can kind of see that. And you'll think you recognize it. And you'll carve and carve and carve, and you'll keep going. And there's a lot of this, like I said, visual noise, because it doesn't seem like she's going to fit in space. It seems like this is more and this is less and this is too close together. As this opens up and she's revealed, you'll reach a point when it's like a wow, I can really see it. And then after that point, you're really great. You'll come to that point, and there'll be a long time you say, yeah, I know where she is and I understand this. And then there'll be a point where you just really see it, or at least it happens with me. And it's really a fun part of the job. Then after that, then you're scared that you don't want to bug her up because you know where she is and you know what she looks like. Until you really see her, you're trying to find her and make sure you take care of her. And then after you see her, you recognize her, and then you're really trying to take care of whatever figures in the stone. So this is, I'm going to keep drilling. Okay, I'm shooting just spread out points. Once you start getting into any depth, you're going to have to open it up in order to reach things. And so I shot a point here on her hair and here, and now I'm doing one on the other, well, here and here, and now I'm doing this one over here. Just to get some stone roughed out, staying up, and then start contouring it. But I've got her hand, and her hand is here, her sleeve will be in here. And then this should be just above her arm. That point will be really close. That's the way I did it. So we can, I think, get her elbow in here, her shoulders in here, and everything should come good. You can use a hand point and a hammer, but you got to be careful because the grain's different on this because it isn't a head-on end. It's not standing up. The grain's coming straight through, and so it's more like cutting a regular die. You can knock out some pieces, but you got to hit them. And if they don't come right out, you got to move right on and not stand there and pound on them, because when you get close to the surface, the final surface, especially if you've got other tall elements next to it, you'll fracture the stone and then it'll just break. And then you're all done. So, you know, with marble, it's feasible to take a hand point and just strip off tons and tons of stone. But the stone comes off real easy. With granite, the stone, you got to be more careful. Okay. All right. I'm guessing this stone video is probably long enough, so I'm going to wrap it up. And hey, my name's Clinton Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculptor Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.